record, they have to approve that it's being recorded. So,
Okay.
admit.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody. So glad you're here. We're going to give everybody a chance to come in. We had 100 people register.
Nice.
So hopefully, fingers crossed.
Nice to see some familiar names. Hi, Debbie. Hi, Trisha. Hi. Michelle. Nice to see the faces too. Let's see.
My daughter, she's going to come and join us too.
Yay.
Yay.
Mhm.
All right. If you guys want to put in the chat where you're at, where you're watching from.
Can you share screen, Megan, or do you want me to do it?
Oh, I can share.
Okay.
But since you're sharing the presentation, you can do it.
Everybody see that? Hopefully. There we are.
Yay.
Several people in the chat. Connecticut, Ontario, South Africa. Wow.
Yay.
Oklahoma City, and Phoenix representing today.
Awesome.
And 2 more in the weight room. Here we go.
Do you have to let them in individually?
I just click admit all.
Okay. I wish there was an option that like once the door is open, it stays open.
Yeah, it would be nice, wouldn't it?
You know.
William from Philly.
Ooh.
Honey just coming in.
Yay, honey.
Hey there. Thanks for being here.
Yay.
Cameron from Texas. Nice. Lots of states and countries in here today.
Awesome. Okay, well, should we get started? I'm missing about 85 people, but I know that's how webinars go these days. So. All right, and we are recording and all right, let's give this a go so we can respect everybody's time. Okay, welcome everybody to our free webinar on pediatric autism and ADHD, and we are specifically talking about cannabis. I could not put cannabis on the graphics because that, does not get seen. So that's what we're specifically talking about today in the pediatric population. I am Mbengue, and then I'm presenting here with Janna Champagne. Next slide. Oh, disclaimer, of course, we have to give this. This is educational purposes only, not medical advice. Our products are not FDA approved or anything like that. It's really important that you check your own state's legal status for giving cannabis and CBD to kids. And then we do not sell illegal substances. And then we'll hold all questions until the end. Feel free to put them in the chat and then we'll address them at the end. Okay, so just a little bit about us and about Trusted Canna Nurse. We are a team of medical professionals, and we specialize in teaching people how to heal with both cannabis and psychedelics. We help people with chronic conditions, such as autism, chronic pain, fibromyalgia, cancer, like I said, autism and ADHD, mental health, and then we treat both pediatrics and adults. And then we have our premium line of CBD products available nationwide. Next. Oh, other way.
Uh-oh, did it go the wrong way?
I went the wrong way.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, here's a little bit about our team. I am Mbengue. I am the founder. This is my baby here. I started this about 2 years ago when I saw this dire need for somebody to like bridge the gap between patients and plant medicine. And then I started this and I just completed a master's degree in medical cannabis therapeutics. Then we have Janna, and she'll get more of an intro in a little bit, but she's our pediatric care specialist. She is a board certified master herbalist, and this is a diplomate in medical cannabis sciences. Is that right? Yes. Okay. Then we have Ariane Williams, who's our other nurse out of Texas. She takes care of most of our adult patients, and she's our director of patient care services. She is specialized in both cannabis and psychedelics. Brandon Simmons is my brother. He is a pharmacist. He helps us with some of our formulations, some of our product development, and then helps us run medication interactions in our patients who are on multiple medications. And then we have Miranda, our fantastic admin coordinator from up in Canada. So that is our current team. And then here's just a little bit about what we offer. We offer, like I said, a full line of premium products. And for people who just want a little bit of guidance on which of our products to choose, we offer a free product guidance call. If you're looking for pediatric, then you would talk to Janna. For adults, you would talk to Ariane. But on top of that, we also offer full mind-body wellness consultations. And that's when we're taking a deep dive into your health. We're looking at medication interactions. We're offering other supplements and ideas for, for your specific problems. And that's when we're spending a lot of time with you and we're following up with you. So we definitely prefer consultations for pediatrics because pediatric cases are often pretty complex and complicated with medications, and they require more follow-up. So we prefer that for our kids. We offer microdosing programs, adults only right now. We don't offer microdosing for kids. And then for people who struggle with, on the other end of the spectrum, in overusing or a poor relationship with cannabis, we offer cannabis cessation programs. We actually did a project in the fall with this, and we're presenting that at CanMed in a couple of days. That reminds me, I have to order the poster for that. And then we have our premium CBD that's available. We're going to go over some of the products that we use on our autism kids. And the discount code, you guys can get 20% off with the code webinar1. So write that down, screenshot that. We'll also put that up at the end. Next. Okay, so today what we're going to do is we're going to go over the ECS basics a little bit. We're going to cover cannabis and autism and ADHD and a lot of the research behind that and harm reduction. We're going to cover some cannabinoid and terpene basics, flow criteria, which is the criteria you should be using when you're purchasing your cannabis and your CBD, and then special considerations for these populations. Okay, and I'm really excited to introduce Janna. I met Janna just about 2 years ago, and she has been a mentor of mine. And now she's on my team taking our pediatric patients, which is so exciting. We're so privileged to have her on our team. She is a master herbalist and a retired nurse. She is also a special needs mom. Her 22-year-old daughter has autism, and I'm hoping maybe she'll share the story of her transition into cannabis. She is also the founder of Autism Safe Haven nonprofit, and we are a donor of that also. More info on that can be found at autismsafehaven.org. And then more info on Janna herself, as well as the research articles that support this presentation, can be found on jannachampagne.com. And then she is also the founder of cannabisnurseapproved.com, which is the products that meet this flow criteria get this cannabis nurse approved symbol. So without further ado, here is Janna here to teach us some things. Thank you, Janna.
Thanks for that intro, Megan. I appreciate it. And you'll notice off to the right, there is this magazine article that I wrote in 2017 that published telling my daughter's story. It's since been updated, and on my website, jannachampagne.com, as Megan mentioned, you can find the article Cannabis for Autism Harm Reduction, which has all the autism-related citations that support today's presentation. A little bit about my background. I came into the cannabis industry as a patient after having a complete health collapse in 2012. Sought cannabis therapy just for pain relief, got much better outcomes. I was actually labeled totally and permanently disabled in 2013. And as of, today, I'm working about 65 hours a week and primary caregiver for my daughter with autism. So it's been a journey. My daughter's story started with her puberty crisis in 2014, where almost overnight she began to exhibit very extreme level autism behaviors, including self-injury, aggressing and beating up everybody she could get her hands on, and she destroyed my home. So we went through a lot of trauma with that transition, as is common to about 50% of those with autism as they come of age. So it is a very common story. And as a nurse, when I compared cannabis as an intervention for her versus the antipsychotic pharmaceuticals that are FDA approved or even off-label use for autism, it was very clear to me that cannabis was the least possibly risky and the most possibly beneficial answer for her. And luckily, cannabis was successful in reducing her puberty crisis symptoms and alleviating to the point where our lives became manageable again, and it really alleviated our family's crisis. So that's what I write about in her article, and we're going to talk more about the science behind that today. So hope to keep listening here. So to understand cannabis for autism and ADHD, it's also really important to have a basic understanding of the endocannabinoid system. This is a system in the human body that we are failing to teach currently in medical and nursing schools. I think it's like 7% of medical schools that include this human body system in anatomy and physiology courses. So this explains why it can be really difficult to find competent medical professionals that understand the endocannabinoid system and understand how cannabis interacts with this system in our body. And the truth of it is that our bodies produce what we call endocannabinoids or internal cannabinoids. These are vital nutrients for human health. They're even argued as necessary for life. And these nutrients we produce internally float throughout our bodies and bind with endocannabinoid receptors, either in our central nervous system and brain or in our peripheral tissues or in our other organs. And they basically promote balance. Anywhere that we have imbalances in the body, this system's job is to turn it around and start promoting balance and working towards a balanced state again, which homeostasis is our fancy word for it. And homeostasis really means optimal health balance. And so when we are sick or have chronic illness of any kind, it reflects that we have underlying imbalances. So this system clearly is very, very high potency for targeting any kind of chronic illness. And so the endocannabinoid system, just in review, it produces endocannabinoids. It also produces receptors and enzymes that help those cannabinoids work better or helps to degrade them so they stop working. When it binds with the receptor, it promotes balance. It mitigates the stress response. Now, we know that stress is the underlying cause of many, many diseases. So that in itself is very high for improving health. It also activates our restore phase, which helps us to eat or sleep and that's also very important for recovering from illness.
Janna, do you have muting power? I don't have muting power.
I am looking to see if I
Can we all make sure we're muted?
Everybody can mute, please. That would be wonderful. I'm going through right now and muting people here. Let's see. Yeah, I think we're all good. Now, thank you, everybody. I appreciate that. Makes it easier to hear. So cannabinoid sources, like we talked about, we create endocannabinoids internally. Our endocannabinoid system does this. And the precursors are dietary omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acid intake, which is notoriously deficient in our standard American diet. We also can source cannabinoids from a plant called Cannabis sativa L. And this is the notorious cannabis plant. There are also fungal plants that create cannabinoids called mycocannabinoids. So that's another source. So when we have endocannabinoids and we can't produce enough in our body for whatever reason, we can actually source these cannabinoids from the plant, and they synonymously kind of fill in for that deficiency of vital nutrients. So the similarities between the phyto or plant source cannabinoids and our endo or internal cannabinoids are very clear. And if we have an deficiency in anandamide, which by the way is linked with autism, anandamide deficiency is evidence-based in research as a correlation with autism. So then we can supplement with THC from the cannabis plant to help fill in for that deficiency. Same thing with an endocannabinoid we call 2-AG. If our body can't produce enough of this, we can supplement with CBD from the cannabis plant, and we see a similar response in the body. It helps to fill in for that vital nutrient deficiency. And this is because they're similar in structure and fairly identical in their response by the body. So what people don't understand is when we talk about cannabis being restricted, we're restricting vital nutrients that fill in for substances that our own bodies create. So once again, we really need to question the logic behind some of these rules and regulations. Endocannabinoid system, oh, darn it, I went backwards again. Sorry about that. So endocannabinoid system deficiency is a term that was coined by Ethan Russo. He wrote about it in 2004 and again in 2012 and in 2016. He links it as a deficiency that causes this condition found in all chronic illnesses. This includes autism and it includes ADHD. So endocannabinoid deficiency leads to systemic imbalances in the body because we don't have enough of those cannabinoids to interact with the endocannabinoid system receptors to promote balance. And so the underlying imbalances create symptoms and illness. So, including inflammation. So causes of endocannabinoid system deficiency can be genetic. We can have a genetic mutation that impacts our body's ability to create endocannabinoids or to have receptors that interact correctly with those endocannabinoids when they meet, or plant-based cannabinoids as well. We can have environmental causes for endocannabinoid deficiency, and this can be, if we have too many toxins in our body, that's going to create imbalances. And by addressing those imbalances, we can deplete our endocannabinoids. Same thing with illness. If we have especially prolonged or chronic illness, we can deplete those endocannabinoids. And then we see kind of this downward spiral, like the chicken and the egg that you see up here to the right, where illness causes endocannabinoid deficiency and endocannabinoid deficiency causes chronic illness. So by supplementing with cannabinoids from the plant, we can actually halt this downward spiral and help patients move towards that homeostasis or optimal health balance. That really is our goal with cannabis therapy. So here we have a slide explaining some of the underlying contributors to autism as a condition. So autism is linked with imbalances in three major systems of the body: the gastrointestinal system, the immune system, and the neurological systems. And our mainstream medicine approach is really lacking here because these systems are left in these tight little boxes. We have the gastroenterologist who specializes in GI disorders. We have the immunologist who specializes in immune disorders. And then we have the neurologist that specializes in neurological disorders. And there's not a lot of focus on how these three systems are very closely linked in the body, and how when one goes askew, it can throw off the other two. So this is really where we're missing a more holistic approach that's looking at the whole body and how these systems are connected. And that seems to be the best way to approach autism biomedically. So with autism, there is a high likelihood of pain and inflammation. It is a spectra disorder, so we have all types of presentations from mild to moderate to severe impact. Now, mild impact might be what we used to call Asperger's syndrome, which is very high functioning, very high intelligence oftentimes, plus maybe some social anxiety or some sensory issues, all the way to severe impact where we might have completely nonverbal and academic challenges and things of that nature, and then everything in between. So like they say, when you meet one child with autism, you've met one child with autism. And I've worked with many hundreds of kids with autism as a cannabis specialty nurse and now as a master herbalist. And I can tell you that no two are exactly the same. So we really try to individualize our approach, really look at that person and what their challenges are, and try to address them specifically based on their needs. So oftentimes we see comorbid attention deficit or ADHD, like we're talking about today, anxiety. Sometimes there's tics or seizures or epilepsy. There's often sleep disruption. So my autism parents out there, sleep deprivation is our norm, isn't it? With the severe presentation, non-limited verbal, we often also see the behaviors of aggression and self-injury and tantrums. And as a parent that has been through this with my daughter, I now interpret behaviors as nonverbal communication. It really is these kids trying to tell us that something is wrong and that they need help a lot of times. And in my daughter's case, when we treated her with the pain-targeted treatments of cannabis, it actually alleviated a lot of her behaviors. So and at the time, my daughter could not verbally express herself very effectively. And so from my perspective, she was trying to communicate to us that she was in pain, and it came out as behaviors. So there's also a bunch of research supporting cannabis for autism, including that it promotes balance in the gastrointestinal, immune, and neurological systems that are often out of balance with autism. So it's targeting those autism imbalances directly. There's other research that shows that autism, parents of autism reported an 80% moderate to significant quality of life improvement when their child started taking cannabis therapy. And we have newer research from just last year with Dr. Bonnie Goldstein that actually shows a biomarker shift in those with autism when they began to take cannabis. And Megan's going to tell us about that here really quickly. Hold on. There we are.
Yeah, this is a really cool study. This is Bonnie Goldstein's work. So what they did in this study was they took 15 autistic kids and 9, they call them TD or typically developing kids, and then they measured biomarkers in their saliva. They measured, or they found 65 cannabis responsive biomarkers, and they found that 23 of those biomarkers changed within the hours following, you know, the cannabis. And what's really cool about this is that all 15 kids had their own unique regimen. And that's really how we need to approach autism, is not like everybody's getting their very own unique regimen. THC went up to like 40 or 50 milligrams in a dose or a day, I can't remember. And then CBD doses went from like 20 to 200. So everybody had their own. That's really important to note. And then the biomarkers that changed are biomarkers that are involved in inflammation, bioenergy, neurotransmitters, amino acids, and endocannabinoids. Here are 2 graphs showing here. The dark blue is the biomarker before, and then the light blue is the biomarker after the peak time, they called it. And so it's, I think, 1 to 2 hours after the dose was given. So NAA is N-acetyl-spartic acid. I'm going to butcher that. That's involved in brain metabolism, and then spermine is involved in the inflammatory response. And the dashed line here is the typically developing kids, and you'll see kind of like the window where they went, or where they kind of sat. And then as you see, the biomarkers got closer to that typically developing level. So this is amazing objective data that we have showing, you know, the significance of cannabis and CBD for children with autism.
Yes, this is an amazing study to bring to your physician if you're in a state where you need to get certification for your child in order to try cannabis with them. This provides really objective evidence. It's the most objective that we have so far, that those with autism may benefit from cannabis, and it may actually help them shift towards a brain that is functioning more like a neurotypical brain. So very, very high impact. Thank you, Megan. So here is what I was talking about when I looked at the pharmaceuticals that were available to treat my daughter with autism. So what is FDA approved are the antipsychotics Abilify and Risperidone. There's also antidepressants, anxiolytics, and benzodiazepines, stimulants, and anticonvulsants that are all used as off-label use, meaning they haven't really been tested or found through evidence-based research to be beneficial for autism, but we try them anyway. So this is kind of reflective of the mainstream medical system throwing everything they can at autism, trying to find something that will stick to the wall. So it really reflects the desperation that they have to find an effective solution for autism with pharmaceuticals. And then we talk about the side effects of these above medications, the declared effects, extrapyramidal symptoms, which is uncontrollable body movements. With this, we see kids that can't walk correctly. We see kids that are constantly licking their lips. We see tic disorders. It can cause profound sedation. So this really disables their ability to have quality of life and be interacting with their environment. Seizures is a known side effect of some of these medications. Mitochondrial damage. Now, autism is often linked with mitochondrial dysfunction already. So these medications can make that worse. Paradoxical effects, meaning they work the opposite of what we expect. And male breast development is one that puts a stop to many parents that are considering these medications for their kid. Like, my kid's already being picked on enough. He doesn't need breasts on top of it. So those are bad enough, but then we have life-threatening side effects like neuroleptic malignant syndrome, Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and suicidal ideation. So clearly these medications come with very high risks of harm to our kids. So, and then we want to talk a little bit about ADHD and the endocannabinoid system. So ADHD is also supported by research as being linked with endocannabinoid dysfunction. And so ADHD itself, a third of the cases that are found in childhood extend into adulthood. The symptoms include inattention, impulsiveness, and hyperactivity. And then to the right is one of the case studies that examined outcomes of CBD for ADHD in adults and pediatrics. And what they found is that after a 6-week treatment, number one, there were no negative side effects on cognitive function because CBD is not intoxicating. And CBD actually improved the core ADHD symptoms. And so the conclusion was that targeting the endocannabinoid system may be a way to ease ADHD symptoms. And of course, further research is needed. Now, most of the cannabis research studies proclaim that, and I agree, we do need more research. The problem is that because of Schedule I placement, our ability to research cannabis is very limited. And hopefully that will be shifting this year. We just heard last week that the DEA is planning to shift federal cannabis regulations to Schedule III, which is going to make cannabis much more widely available in the United States. So fingers crossed that they follow through on that. Here's some more of the science review for cannabis for ADHD support. And so there's Skubal et al. 2022 did a meta-analysis. So he reviewed 17 research studies that were CBD for ADHD and looked at those outcomes. And what that compilation found is that CBD reduced hyperactivity, it improved focus, and it also improved impulse control. So some of these basic tenets that end up with a diagnosis of ADHD. And so this research study clearly supports CBD for treating ADHD symptoms. Another study, Miletus in 2019, showed that the CB1 neurotransmitter balancing was a viable target for ADHD, and that dopamine imbalances, which CB1 agonism or having the cannabis plant interact with that CB1 receptor in the body, the endocannabinoid receptor, actually can help improve the dopamine imbalances that are linked with ADHD. So we know from other research as well that cannabis is known to promote balance in neurotransmitters like dopamine. So this was not too surprising. And then we have the Huffstetler research from last year, showing that after a single dose of CBD was given, it improved attention in male rats with ADHD. Now, once again, this is research on rats, and once cannabis is rescheduled, we should be able to start actually researching cannabis on humans. Right now, there's a lot of barriers to doing that. So I expect that we're going to continue to see even more research on this topic. But in the interim, we just need to remember that the science really outweighs the stigma in these cases. So here's the pharmaceutical approach for cannabis for ADHD, or yeah, I'm sorry, for pharmaceuticals for ADHD. So the FDA approved or off-label use pharmaceuticals include stimulants like Ritalin and Adderall, which are basically methamphetamines, antidepressants or SNRIs, antipsychotics like Abilify and Risperidone, and the anxiolytics and benzos like Ativan. And the side effects um, include, quality of life threatening, where there's extrapyramidal symptoms and movement disorders and tics, hallucinations, agitation, insomnia, headaches, nausea or appetite loss. And then the life threatening side effects include suicidal ideation, self-harm, cardiac arrhythmias, seizures, and neuroleptic malignant syndrome. And so we know from the research that the CB1 transmitter balancing is a viable target for ADHD. Now, none of these medications actually target that CB1 receptor. Only cannabis is able to do that. So what we notice with the outcomes of using cannabis for autism or ADHD is reduced reliance on the pharmaceuticals, which means reduced side effects. All those side effects that we listed that are so horrific on quality of life and possibly even life-threatening are alleviated when we use cannabis successfully for these conditions. We see improved quality of life and function. We see crisis situations like autism puberty crisis de-escalate. We see these families finally able to take a deep breath and go, okay, this is manageable. And really, when you objectively use this risk versus benefit of cannabis versus the pharmaceuticals for these conditions, it's very clear that cannabis is the safest and potentially the most beneficial because it can work on that deeper level where it's promoting balance in these areas of imbalance underlying these conditions. So more of the science is that autism is linked with endocannabinoid deficiency, and it's specifically anandamide. And we have the ADHD science reviews that we just covered, and also just understanding that cannabinoids are vital nutrients for human health by promoting homeostasis or balance. So once again, science trumps the stigma. So I want to cover just some of the main cannabinoids that are available on the market today. There's more than 165 cannabinoids that are produced by the cannabis flower. Of course, THCA is one of my personal favorites. This is what we started my daughter on when she was an early teenager starting on her cannabis journey. It's lovely because it's not intoxicating, and many parents are concerned about that intoxicating effect on their child. It is the raw form of THC. So this is created by either processing raw flower through, you could put it in a smoothie, you can juice it, or by infusing it raw into an oil substrate to make a tincture. So it's not heated at all. And that's the reason it's not intoxicating. Some of the indications for autism and THC include inflammation, pain, and seizures. So that's a great product to start off with if you have a child with autism and you're just starting off with cannabis. Then we have THC, which of course is fairly infamous, as the federal Schedule I restrictions still apply to it to this day. It is very intoxicating, which of course can be a consideration for pediatrics, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But some of the autism indications include insomnia, pain, stress, meltdowns, and reducing sensory overstimulation. We've seen THC do all of the above for our kids with autism. So it can be a really powerful tool for helping improve our kids' quality of life. And I have to say, because THC in autism is filling in the anandamide deficiency, it's very rare to see these kids actually show any sign of intoxication, even though it is intoxicating. I feel like it's because we're just filling in for the deficiency to bring them to baseline normal. And you really have to bypass that pretty profoundly to get to where it shows as intoxicating. My daughter's been using cannabis for almost a decade, and I can count on one hand the amount of times that I've seen her show any type of intoxication with THC. Then there's CBD, which of course is what is the main compound in the Trusted Canna Nurse tinctures. CBD, of course, hits multiple receptor sites, so it does many things to help promote balance. It's not intoxicating at all. It can be mildly stimulating, and we can still create formulations that are a little more sedative, and we'll talk more about that too. It's multi-use. It has the most research-supported indications of all the cannabinoids so far, probably because it's the easiest one to test and research. And then the indications for autism include pain, anxiety, depression, gut and immune disorders, imbalances, and psychosis. CBD is also a wonderful tool for ADHD. And we find that in combination, especially in combination with CBG. And so we're going to talk more about that as well. Then we have the CBG that I just mentioned, and this works differently from the CBD. Also not intoxicating, but can be very stimulating. It's indicated for promoting gut and immune balance. And the indications for autism include targeting neuroinflammation, which is another hallmark of autism, as we see brain inflammation in these kids. The neurotransmitter balances, it can help to target those and improve them. That's the dopamine, that's the serotonin, that's the GABA glutamate that we see out of skew in autism. It can improve speech, and for ADHD, it can certainly help with the focus as well. And it also helps to target gut inflammation, which is a root contributor to autism. So that's another wonderful tool. CBN is a degradation of THC. It hits multiple receptor sites, and it's known to be very sedative. It is mildly intoxicating. So of course, nighttime use tends to be, the best timing on that. And it's wonderful for insomnia and helping to suppress the neurological system when it's on too high, when it's turned up too much, like we see in our kids with autism and ADHD. And then we have a couple of other raw forms that we love, the CBDA and CBGA, which are the raw forms of CBD and CBG. So basically, I should have explained this, but anytime you take a cannabinoid that has an A on the end, it's the raw form. It's the acidic form. That's what that A stands for. And when you heat them, they convert, that acid falls off. So this is how THCA becomes THC, and CBDA becomes CBD, and CBGA becomes CBG. So if that's not clear, we're happy to answer questions on that. But in the acid forms, they're always not intoxicating. And because of that, they're readily available throughout the United States, which is wonderful under the Hemp Act. And they're multi-use. They have a lot of research-supported indications, and especially good for inflammation, pain, and gut imbalances. So the terpenes are another compound that the cannabis plant produces. The terpenes, they really provide the scent of the cannabis flower. They also provide some other medical benefits that are supported by research. You can kind of think of them as the essential oils that the cannabis plant produces. They provide this synergistic entourage effect in combination with the cannabinoids. And the terpenes really drive the effect of the cannabinoid. And while I don't love the terms indica and sativa, they're kind of archaic and they don't really fit as well anymore. It's helpful when you walk into a dispensary, they're still using these terms. So we still teach them. But indica would mean that this type of flower is more dominant in terpenes that are known to be calming and sedative. So these tend to be the best ones for autism. Sativa is the term that they use to describe a flower whose dominant terpenes are more energizing and uplifting. And these tend to be best for ADHD, and especially if someone with ADHD is known to be responsive to stimulant therapy like Ritalin or Adderall. It's going to be a stimulating type of cannabis that's going to best replace that, if that makes sense. So let's see. And then we have the hybrids, which are kind of a balance of both the indica and sativa terpenes, and oftentimes the flowers in the dispensary can be mislabeled. So we only really know what to expect of a specific flower or a specific blend of formulations by looking at the lab testing on that profile, which is not often readily available. So, thankfully, Trusted Canna Nurse does terpene lab testing on all of their products, and they're readily available to the public. So those, you can really look and see what we're talking about with these terpenes and how they might benefit specific needs by patients. So some of the terpenes I love for autism include myrcene. Same with ADHD, actually. Myrcene actually helps the cannabinoids cross that blood-brain barrier and get it into the neurological system where it's needed to promote balance. It's known to be anti-inflammatory. It also has anti-seizure benefits, and in large amounts, it can be kind of sedative. Beta-carophylline is another powerhouse terpene. It actually acts like a cannabinoid. It acts sort of like the CBG. It activates that CB2 receptor. So we call it cannabinomimetic is our fancy term for that. So that makes it a very unique terpene. It also has some antibacterial and anti-seizure benefits. And with that CB2 activation, it can actually target brain inflammation very effectively, which can be found in both autism and ADHD. Linalool is another one I love for autism. It tends to be very sedative, and it is known by the research to be anti-anxiety and anti-seizure. And then we have limonene, which tends to be more stimulating. So this would be another good one for ADHD. It tends to elevate mood, so good for things like depression as well. Very motivating, as well as improving focus. And then we have pinene, which is also very energizing, good for ADHD. Anti-inflammatory, also known to improve focus. And this is all per the research on these specific terpenes. Just to digress a moment, oftentimes with certain extraction preparations, the terpenes are actually stripped away from the cannabinoids. Sometimes they're added back in, but it's really just not ideal. Basically, what we want to be doing is concentrating the flower as nature intended without stripping anything away. And we're going to talk more about that on the next slide for the flow criteria. So the flow criteria, my nurses and I came up with this in 2018 after experiencing through our patients the difference between various cannabis formulations. And what we found was also supported by the research is that those formulations that are concentrating the cannabis flower with all of its 500 plus compounds as nature intended without deliberately stripping anything away are really optimal for therapeutic use. It provides a synergy. It actually elevates the efficacy. It decreases the side effects. It's more predictable in the body's response. And so we came up with the flow criteria to teach patients what to seek. And you can see in the picture here to the right, it's only about 10% of the CBD products that meet the flow criteria. And one telltale way to examine these products and determine whether they're optimal is by looking at the color. You see the product on the right is nice and dark, this amber color. That still has all the bioflavonoids and all of the chlorophyll and all of those other beautiful compounds in it, where the one on the left looks like just oil. And sometimes we even see watercolored tinctures. Those are not optimal. So that's one way to really tell pretty well, from the get-go, whether your product is worth purchasing. And so the flow criteria stands for flower derived. We don't want stems, stalks, or leaves. The flower is where we get the most potency in all of those beautiful compounds that we want for medicine. We want it lab tested. This is to verify both the potency and the purity. We don't want product with contaminants in it, especially working with patients that could potentially make them more sick. We want everything organic. Once again, we don't want toxins in our medicine. And then the W is for whole plant, meaning we really like food grade ethanol extracted. Butane is kind of a close second, or directly infused are the best ways to get whole plant spectrum products. And these are optimal for therapeutic use. So some of the considerations around using cannabis in pediatrics, so obviously for pediatric use, medical is all that's appropriate. We are not looking for recreational use of cannabis for pediatrics. Legal and access restrictions may apply. Of course, we have CBD that is legal nationwide as hemp under the 2018 Hemp Act. And it's not just the CBD, it's CBD, CBG, many of the acids. There's several of the compounds that we can access through the Hemp Act that makes them legal in all 50 states, where THC is still pretty widely restricted. Pediatric situations require consideration around which compounds are appropriate, what medications might interact with those cannabinoids. We also want to look at some genetic factors that could potentially be of issue. And, one of them is MTHFR mutations, which are really common with autism, can actually predispose the neurodevelopmental risk factors that are known with THC use in childhood or adolescence. So thankfully, we have a lot of non-intoxicating compounds of cannabis under the Hemp Act that we can utilize that don't have that risk factor to start with. So that's a great place to begin if you have a child with autism or ADHD and you're looking to start them on cannabis. There's also an AKT1 mutation. It's only about 2% of the population that carries the schizophrenia gene, and it contradicts intensive or high THC use. But the full spectrum CBD that contains 0.3% THC, and that's the parameter that was set by the 2018 Hemp Act, those are still okay to use. It's like the straight THC that we want to be careful about with schizophrenia. And actually, full spectrum CBD, I've worked with clients with schizophrenia that do beautifully on that product. So we need to remember that cannabis has this unsurpassed safety profile. So when you compare it to the horrific side effects of the pharmaceuticals for these conditions, it's very clearly much safer. It has dozens of indications for use that are supported by research. We do have those THC considerations for pediatrics and the potential for pharmaceutical interactions that we want to look closely at. But in general, the outcomes using cannabis for autism or ADHD are far superior to pharma. We reduce the pharma, we reduce the side effects, we improve quality of life and function, and it's very well supported by research for anxiety, depression, stress, pain, insomnia, and endocannabinoid system deficiency, which is linked with both autism and ADHD. So back to you, Megan.
Excellent. Thank you, Janna. Wonderful as always. So just a little bit of backstory on this. When I started this business, I didn't want to carry products because I kind of saw that, like, is that a conflict of interest that I'm offering the products? So I just wanted a place that I could refer patients to. However, I couldn't find the quality products on the market that I wanted to recommend to my patients. So that's when I was like, I need to do it myself so that I know exactly what they're getting and I know that they're getting quality products. So we have a number of products that meet flow criteria and meet, the cannabis nurse approved. And here's just a little bit about them. Tranquil, I would say this is most popular for our autistic kids to get started on is CBD, CBN, relatively low dose. It has linalool and myrcene. Those are the calming terpenes in them. Then we have Relief, which is high CBD, small amount of THC, and that has beta-caryophyllene, linalool, and myrcene. And so that's like great for, that can also be calming, but great for pain and inflammation. Our adults like to use that for pain. And then we have Thrive and Thrive XL. And we actually formulated this in collaboration with former NFL player Gilbert Brown, because we were kind of targeting his chronic pain and his previous head injuries from when he played in the NFL. So this one is fantastic for neuroinflammation, and it's got these uplifting terpenes, limonene and pinene, and then 4 different cannabinoids. That's supposed to say CBD and CBG, and then their respective acids. And then I gotta minimize this. And then we have Ease, which is CBGA and CBG. This is really great for people who are, experiencing like the physical symptoms of anxiety, like in chest or stomach. It works on receptors involved in our fight or flight response. In children with autism, it might be CBG can be a little bit stimulating. In kids with ADHD, it can really help with focus. And then this has a beta-caryophyllene, limonene, and myrcene. So it's kind of more of a hybrid, but we find the feedback we get is that it's more of an uplifting thing. However, everybody has their own response. Some people take CBG for sleep. So it's important to consider. So yeah, these are, and then we have topicals and suppositories too, but these are the most popular tinctures. And I think that's it. Next slide. Okay, so if people are interested in working with us or with Janna, it's really easy. You just go to the website, you can click. Actually, tomorrow you'll be getting an email with this information that has updated links. You can book a free product guidance call with Janna, or you can go to the website and purchase the consultation there. And then in the confirmation email, you'll get the link to book with her. And then if you guys are just interested in the products themselves, use code webinar1 for 20% off. You can always reach me at Megan@trustedcannanurse.com, or Janna has a link on jannachampagne.com. And with that, I think we want to open it up to questions that people have. Feel free to put them in the chat, or there aren't that many people, so you can just unmute yourself and ask if you would like.
I have a question. I'm trying to remember how, okay, here we go. We can take the camera off. Hi, everybody. This was a wonderful presentation. I am a caregiver and a mother of a child with severe autism, nonverbal. My question is, one, it was a lot of information. Are the slides available? Can we get the slides to kind of go back through, or the recordings available to go back through? And secondly, it was really, really good. It was a great presentation. When you're looking to educate the schools based off of the IEPs that you're looking to help them understand, what would be your suggestion in working with them? My daughter, it does have a prescription. I do have a caregiver card. I'm entrenched in this. I'm trying to make it a positive way, but getting people to understand exactly what I need them to understand, that her behavior is communication, getting them to understand the best way to assist her is crucial for me. So right now she is a card carrying patient. She does take cannabis. We're trying to microdose her, so I'm learning about microdosing. We've also put her on a medicinal mushroom as lion's mane to help her with focus. And I'm trying to kind of balance those two things. But I am in the dark, a lot of trial and error for myself. So my question is how to help the school understand what we're going through. And then two, the microdosing, what is the best way to understand titration for her? What should I look for? Because she doesn't talk. So I'm just trying to understand that.
I'll take the first part of that. We will be sending out an email with the recording, and I think we'll send a PDF of the slides for this as well. And when you say microdosing, are you talking about microdosing psilocybin?
No, microdosing the cannabis.
Okay.
So
right.
When we go into a dispensary, here in my particular state, you're just playing a compound pharmacist. You go in and when you get home, you cut up your gummies. And now I've started to use honey. They sell honey by a stick. And so I'm microdosing with the honey with the very little things. We started out on CBD that did not help her in a way that she needed help. She needed a lot more help.
Yeah. Go ahead, Janna.
Yeah, super, super common. So a couple of things. The quality of the product can make or break response. So if you're not certain that the products that you're using are meeting the flow criteria, that in itself might be a reason to look for another brand. And then as far as the school, I mean, are you in California?
No, I'm not in California. I'm in a medical state. I'm in Oklahoma. So we understand cannabis, but we don't have a pediatric brand. And so I'm excited about, I'm assuming your brand can be sold over state lines. So I'm excited about that. And I want to be able to understand how that would work for them to understand, hey, when I tell them she's on cannabis, that they are able, hey, honey, yeah, you're a Tulsa girl. Oklahoma in the house. Yeah, I want to be able to express that and understand how to relate that to them. in ways that make sense in the IEP. So I love the fact that you gave that information, but just how they can understand it. What's the best way you think to explain it?
Of course. And one of the links that we're going to send tomorrow in the email is to my article, Cannabis for Autism Harm Reduction, which details a lot of what we talked about today and has all of the citations to the research that are supporting these statements. So that might be something you could bring to the school district just to kind of help introduce them to the idea. If you're looking to have them actually administer her medications, that's a whole nother ball of wax. And I know there's many states that are fighting to have the school nurses administer cannabis to their kids. Oftentimes it's epilepsy, they're just so reliant on it in order to not have seizures. But even then, it's kind of a fight. Unfortunately, our government and all of the entities within the government still really lack an understanding of this plant. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of overregulation that's not warranted. I believe it was Colton's law in California or in Colorado that is one of those initiatives that is trying to enforce protecting the right of school-age children to have their cannabis administered by a school nurse. So you could look at those sorts of laws that are in place, and then it would probably take you advocating or pulling together some parents to advocate to make it a law in Oklahoma. Unfortunately, that's kind of the process for that. I'm not surprised to hear your daughter didn't do well with CBD initially. Oftentimes CBD for autism can initially trigger a worsening of behaviors or a worsening of presentation for various reasons. And there's actually an article on my media kit website, jannachampagne.com, CBD for autism and immune disorders, that kind of explains why that might be. And the take home is that some detoxification pathway improvement might actually improve her response to CBD. And that was the case with my daughter. We started her off with the THCA and THC. And then once we did some detox improvement with her, then she was able to tolerate the CBD. And today she takes a whole slew of many different cannabinoids and sees benefits from all of those. So, this may warrant reaching out and doing a consultation, and we can talk more detail about how that would look for your daughter if you'd like to do
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
That would be on your website? To the consultation.
Yeah. So if you go to the website, trustedcannanurse.com, talk to a nurse, and then it's the mind body wellness consultation.
Okay. Thank you, ladies. Awesome.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. And I saw another question in here. Somebody asked to repeat the product recommendations for ADHD with kids and adults. So on the Trusted Canna Nurse line, it would be either the Ease or the Thrive line that would be appropriate for ADHD. And then don't forget your coupon code that we have for today.
And that's the purple and the gold.
There you go. Honey, your kitty looks like my kitty who's right here trying to get in my lap. In fact, here she comes. She heard me.
Yeah, oh look. Can't keep these kitties out of the picture.
Our orange cat's the best.
I'm so grateful to be learning from both of you, Janet. Wonderful presentation, and Megan, always so proud of you, honey. I'm just curious, not a scientist, not a doctor, not a nurse. How are you coming up with the decision about percentages of these compounds, in the bottle? So you've got one product that's got BCP and linalool and whatever. How are you deciding on those, the percentages in the product? I'm just curious.
The percentages of terpenes or cannabinoids, or both?
All of the above, because you got the whole product there, but you're adding more concentration of like BCP and linalool and whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so is that just a compilation of all of your data that you're getting from patients now?
I would say patient feedback is one thing. We used to carry like CBD and CBG together, and it was like 15 of each. And we didn't get a lot of fantastic feedback on that. Like the doses were just too low. on that one. So that's,
Yeah.
that's kind of where Thrive came from, where we upped the game on that to increase CBD and CBG. We know the acids are more potent
Right.
at the receptor sites than their respective cannabinoids. So CBDA and CBGA are more potent than CBD and CBG. So that's why there's like lower amounts in Thrive and Ease. Janna,
So
did you have
impressed with
any-
your products.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah. All of the products, and when we're talking whole plant and meeting the flow criteria, one of the things we look at is this profile something that nature would produce? And we really follow that cue. And many of the base profiles that, oh yeah, somebody raised their hand. Some of the base profiles are actually from plants that I grew in my garden back in the day. Like found a plant that was beautiful for pain. So we created a pain formulation by duplicating that profile in a bottle. And it also comes from many, many years of experience working with thousands of patients, back in the day when all we had was THC and THCA, and we were lucky to have indica and sativa, to being able to custom blend and enhance these base profiles with specific terpenes for those specific targeted uses is really where a lot of that came from. So lots of trial and error, lots of feedback from patients, lots of tweaking, so and also, understanding that there's individual variation and that, some people are going to need that custom blending or custom tweaking in order to find the profile that works for them. And
I've just recently found out about the joys of beta caryophyllene in a concentrated form.
yes,
And I've been using, BCP and I've been looking for it and everything I was using, but never had it in this kind of concentrated form before. And I am totally flabbergasted and shocked at what just one terpene can do. And the lifting it gave me was amazing. So I'm thrilled to see it in your products in, a more concentrated form, because wowzers, and the science on it is just glorious. So thank you for that.
yes, of course. Now, Michelle had her hand raised. Michelle, there you are.
Yeah, I just have a question, like with autism patients, do you ever find a difficulty in the taste? I know, like for me, for my daughter, I've been like experimenting with like so many different methods of delivery because the taste is just always the thing. I know it works okay in like savory, like croutons. My CBD croutons I can get her to have, but but just I find that a big challenge. Have you worked around that yourself?
Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, I'll go with the first part. So if capsules and pills are an option, then getting capsules and pills are an option for yours.
She doesn't like to take pills at
Gotcha.
all.
Gotcha. For the kids who do take this, and then I'll let Janna take over with the other option. This is what I do with my kids to take their CBD, is we put it in a capsule. A size 0 fits about 0.75 mils. So this is like, because taste of whole plant is, unfortunately, it's not like Skittles. It is like eating some very raw nature there. So a capsule can work, and even there's a straw, there's a pill straw. Janna can talk more about that. So for kids who can take capsules and pills, that's an option, and Janna can talk about the other options.
Yeah, how old is your child, Michelle?
She is 19 this month.
19. Okay. And okay, so have you tried putting pills in like applesauce or pudding or some kind of a softer food? Because that's one way to get it down. That's an old nurse's trick. We always put pills in applesauce that we're giving patients that don't swallow pills very well. There is also a pill straw, which Megan mentioned, which is, it looks just like a straw and you stick a pill on the top and it goes down with the fluid. So that's another way to teach our kids to swallow pills. If those are just absolutely not, then putting it in foods that help to mask the flavor, like you were talking about. On the sweeter side, peanut butter, chocolate is another great way to mask it. Cinnamon is another great way. So there are certain flavors that seem to kind of meld with it and make it not taste so strong. We can also use food grade essential oils, mint, lavender, vanilla. There's different flavors that you can use to kind of soften the flavor if you're doing it sublingually.
Right.
Do remember that if you're putting it in food and she's swallowing it, it is going to change how long it takes to kick in and how long it lasts. So when
It was doing okay for a little bit with the oil, and I wonder if I put in an essential oil to help with that, if that would make any difference.
yeah, there's lots of different strategies, and it just kind of depends on the kiddo and what they're used to. My daughter takes all of her supplements in cannabis capsules and applesauce every day, so that's how we do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, feel free to reach out if you'd like to problem solve further. You know, we've got the free guidance. Happy to talk with you more.
All right, thank you.
Welcome. So we have a chat question here from Angerly Fritz. How do you decide dosing recommendations on kids? I assume it includes symptoms and concerns, but is there a minimum dosage? How often do you follow up with patients for adjusting dosing regimens? Okay, so do you want to take this one, Megan, or you want me to?
You can take this one.
So for all patients, not just kids, we tend to start low, increase slowly, stop where you feel good. It's very flexible. We do want to be working around and spacing from any pharmaceuticals that might interact with cannabis therapy. So that's the main consideration as far as, the flexibility of use. Otherwise, if there's no pharmaceuticals in the mix, you can use it as you need it. And so with autism, this is especially helpful because our kids can look so different from day to day. They can wake up one day and just be happy and excited and doing great, having a great day, wake up another day and it's the opposite. They're having a really hard time and they're struggling. So we can really dose to their needs. On those harder days, we can give them extra dosing. So it's not that the goal kind of is to experiment and find a regimen where, we start usually with sublingual, couple drops under the tongue, build from there. Also, it's helpful to journal to determine which products are best for targeting which symptoms and have that information so that you can respond accordingly. If they're showing more pain one day, you know which product to pull from to give them for that pain. But through journaling, we can often get to a point where we've built up to capsules, which have the advantage of lasting longer in the body. So when you take an oil and you drop it under your tongue, it's going to kick in pretty quickly for most, 15 minutes is kind of average, but it only lasts 2 to 3 hours. When you put it in a capsule or put it in food and swallow it, it's going to take 30 minutes to 2 hours to kick in, but then it'll last 6 to 8 hours. So you're getting much longer duration from that same product if it's swallowed. But to figure out how much to put in the capsule, we figured that out sublingually. Okay, what does this do? How much does this do? Okay, this seems like a good amount. Now put it in a capsule and swallow it. And you get that same relief for longer. So my daughter is currently taking a capsule in the morning, a capsule at 3 p.m., a capsule at night. Plus she's getting sublingual dosing in between as needed. So that's sort of what it looks like a decade in. And like I said, she's taking like half a dozen different compounds in that mix. So yeah, and journaling is very, very important. We do provide my consultations, I provide a free patient handbook that gives a lot of the basic information in science and also provides a journal. And I know, Jessica and Nurse, you have a journal as well that Ariane, correct?
Yep. Ariane published this one.
Okay.
Cannabis. I mean, it's more like about, it has like flour in it, but it has like, other specifics that you can put in there. So that's on the website too. It's
Yeah.
under the bundles category.
And then Brianna mentioned that there is a cannabis journaling app on the Tetragram app it's called. So I'm not familiar with that, but that, might be worth checking out as well. So thank you, Brianna. I appreciate that.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns, stories? Anything from anybody?
How can we get that cannabis journal and what's it cost? Where's the link to it? Put it in the thing.
All right,
Maria?
That's
That's a good
drop.
one.
Yeah, Ariane worked really hard on that one.
Yeah,
Let me pull
I
up
wanna
the
see that.
link and I'll drop that. It's like
thanks so much.
12, $13 plus you get the discount code too. So let me get it for you. Bundles. Okay, hold on. Gotta find my Zoom window again. There we go. All right. Any other questions or anything?
Oh, Debbie raised her hand. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Janna. How are you? Hi,
Yeah.
Megan. Hi, everybody. I was wondering, you were talking about doing ingestibles, and I was wondering, do you find that children, when you're working with them, have some of the same gut issues that adults have, with some of it not always working when they're going through the digestive system?
Let me take this one.
Mhm.
Yeah, there are individuals who don't digest anything very well. And of course, that would be a reason to look at a form other than oral ingestion for the cannabis therapy. So we have the topicals, we have the sublinguals, we have inhalants. We have many ways to get the cannabis into the body. And of course, we try to individualize that approach. So if an individual has digestive issues or absorption issues through their gastrointestinal tract, then yeah, we would be looking at different ways to administer the cannabis for sure.
And I guess my question would be, how do you, like, if you have a child that's nonverbal, how do you figure out that that's not working so well? Do you have any, tips or ideas of how we should be watching to determine that?
Yeah, I would just say it would be non-response, probably. It's going to take trial and error. Oftentimes kids with autism, their parents have put them through testing, whether it's stool testing or other digestive tract tests to determine their function. And so sometimes they have that information already and we know to work around it. Other times it's they're ingesting a whole bunch and we're not seeing any response. Well, then it might be something that we come to the conclusion that we need to try a different mode. So.
And I'll
Okay.
add too that one study showed that cannabis or CBD bioavailability increased when taken with a fatty meal. So that's something that can definitely help. Like it tripled when taken with fat.
Yeah. I just didn't know if there was a difference, if there was anything that was different within children within adults, because I don't work with children in this field. I work with adults. So I was just trying to figure out if there's any differences or if you see it to be pretty much the same across the board.
Yeah, it's just so individual. It can be there can be an adults or children that have digestive issues that would need, accommodation with different forms of intake. So that's
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Just checking the chat here. Any other questions? I think that's everything from the chat. Let's see. Oh, one new message. Let me see. Oh, that's you with the tracking journal. Yeah, I think that's everything.
All right. Thank you, everybody. You'll be getting an email tomorrow or maybe the next day with all this information. And make sure you're following us on social media. Maybe pick one because I put the same content on all of them, so you don't get the same video 18 times. And then sign up for our emails. That's where we put our discounts and specials and all of that, because we can't promote that on social media. And then feel free to reach out to either of us if you have questions or need help or anything like that. And thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Stop recording.
Wonderful lecture, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank
Thanks, Annie.
you.